Hello, you're very welcome to this edition of AFI Weekly here on the Under Centre podcast. Dara here with you by himself because some of the other lads are not available. Obviously, Alex is away on holidays. The Malloys are disposed otherwise. Hopefully, we might have rain towards the end of the show. So we're going to go with a slightly earlier time tonight. We're going to try and go Lone Ranger on this. So if you are watching, comments would help, something to bounce off maybe. But if not, that's cool. We will go through all the games from this past weekend, and we will then obviously look ahead to this coming weekend's games, which plenty of playoff implications in store for that too. We're going to start and go straight into it on Saturday's games. First one to have a look at is the I'm getting ahead of myself here. The Dublin Rebels, they took the trip down south to take on the Cork Admirals. The Admirals came out 16-8 winners on that game. Scoring wise, Ben Kennedy had two rushing TDs, I should say. There was a safety scored by Matthew Shiabani, Shiabioni, and Joe Doran. There was a 2-point conversion by Jay Kennedy to Declan May as well. On the Rebel side of things, it was a passing touchdown from Sam Doran to Jack Cronin, and it was that same connection for the 2-point after. So a vital win for Cork in their hunt to try and secure probably that fourth and last playoff spot before to get into the postseason and to challenge obviously for a Shamrock Bowl. For the Rebel side of things, this is going to hurt their chances now because obviously the Admirals are going to have that head-to-head. Both teams are currently 2 and 3, occupying 4th and 5th place, and Cork obviously now will have the 4th spot because of the head-to-head, like I mentioned. And it's a great turn of events for Cork, obviously with the 0-3 start to the season, winning 2 in a row against the 2 Dublin teams, the Panthers and the Rebels. They did have that tough start against the Trojans UCD Knights. We've said that throughout the whole season as been stated, but the fact that they've been able to get 2 wins on the bounce, and this win especially against a rival for a playoff position, is going to do wonders for them for the rest of this year. Still, I have to say, I questioned it last time as well. I've questioned it the last few weeks. The offense is not a worry. I'm not going to say a real worry, and it's going to cause them, but there's still things to fix. We're getting to that point of the year, and me and Alex spoke about it 2 weeks ago, that, if your offense isn't ticking, humming at this point of the year, it's very unlikely that you're going to suddenly start it before the end of the season. They are fortunate to have such a strong defense, only conceding 8 points and scoring a safety this past weekend just shows how strong that Admirals defense is. The offense are at the moment doing enough to get them over the line, especially in this game, in such a tight game, I should say, in a low-scoring game. But if you go to the game against the Knights, the offense didn't put up any points in that game at all. They lost 11-4 because the defense scored 2 safeties. If the offense were able to, finish drives off and score, we could be looking at a 3-2 Cork Admirals team right now. So, or even with the Trojans game as well. The Trojans game, I think, finished 6. I have to have a look here at the points, at the scores, but it was a score in it, less than a score in it. To see, I have it here. Yeah, 8-13. So if the offense were able to just get finish a few more drives, we could be looking at a 4-1 team instead of a 2-3 team at the moment. So, they know what they have to fix, and we'll see going forward. On the Rebel side of things, It's a tough loss against, they would have gone down there hoping they could get this win and maybe effectively wrap up playoffs, especially with some difficult games to come. Most notably that return one against UCD just on the horizon. So, they are kind of a little bit behind the eight ball. They now are relying on other teams to help them to get that. But they still have a couple of home games left. They still have some very winnable away games as well. So we will see with them what's going to happen now in the next few weeks. On the other game on Saturday, and this was down in Division 1, it was up in Causeway at Lion Park. It was the Causeway Giants 14, the Kildare Crusaders 30. You know, yes, the Crusaders won, but that's not the full story of this game. The fact that they won going up to Causeway with 15 players, 15 guys that, and you're talking 4 guys that can sub in and out. It's a long day, especially in that heat and everything like that. Full credit to the Crusaders on that win. There was a lot of things going against them in terms of they just come off their like rival game, losing in the fashion that they did against the Rhinos. They could have going up there with 15. From the outsider point of view, you could have easily have seen that the players could have maybe phoned in for the year, but the 15 guys that were there played extremely, extremely well. On the scoring side of things, especially, I have them here. Wello with 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, and 1 pick six. He also had an interception on that. TJ Cooper Dwayne had a receiving touchdown and a 2-point conversion from Jordan Farrell, and James Ahern got himself a 2-point conversions. On the Giants side of things, Peter Phillips had 2 receiving touchdowns, 1 thrown by Jig McCoy, 1 thrown by Nathan Chapman, and Ruin Austin had a 2-point conversion on that as well. We talked about it last week that for both these teams, they're coming into a period of, where each game is a final. There's no room for error anymore. They have to go out and win these games. And the Crusaders have won their first final here in that sense. They have gotten the win that they need to keep that 4th spot. Now, results elsewhere would have shown that I think they would have kept 4th spot either way this way, but they wouldn't have known that on Saturday. The Giants side of things, I'm just having a look here at the 5. They are 0-4 and 1 at the moment. 3 games left, so that means 6 points to play for. It's not completely, they're not mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, Heart Bowl contention, but you're going to find it very difficult. They play this weekend against the Mavericks. They come down to Dublin to face the Rhinos in a couple of weeks, and then they finish off against the Eagles. It's tough to see where to get all 3 wins necessary to make it to the postseason. It's definitely not beyond the realms of possibility, but you're just asking a lot, and a chance for them to defend the plate is not the worst thing in the world. Although there's a lot of Giants coaches and players that would probably not agree with what I'm saying right now. And look, if I was in their position, I would be the same too. But it's still growing. You get a sense sometimes that maybe too much success too soon can hurt a team, and maybe that was the case. I just, while I have it here, I have my savior on the line. Hold on, let me get him here.
Howdy.
How are you, sir?
I'm excellent on this fine, well, not so fine Tuesday afternoon. But looking forward to talk a bit of football.
I know, right? It's awful weather out there. Shocking.
Definitely a big change from the weekend.
I
Yeah,
know.
but sure,
Well,
what can you
look,
do?
with that rain, there's nothing better to do than to roll up on the sofa and just listen to our silky voices now for the next 40 minutes or so.
That's
We
exactly
just
it.
got through. I just got through talking about the Cork and that Rebels game. I'm in the middle now talking about that Crusaders game against the Giants. The Crusaders going up there with 15 guys and coming out with the win. Hugely impressive feat in that sense. And, we talked about it last week about how both of these teams were getting into that stage where every game is a final. The Crusaders have won one of their 3 finals that they need now to make it into the postseason. For the Giants, it kind of looks like a chance for top 4 is gone for this season. And what I was saying just there, that, getting into the plate and defending it is not the worst thing in the world. But sometimes teams are a victim of early success, if you know what I mean. If you take it at a broader NFL level, you know, you look at the Texans maybe might be a good case study, and especially with CJ Stroud, his first season in the NFL blows everyone away. They make the playoffs. No one expects them to do as well as they did, and then the following year they have a bit of a dip.
Yeah,
Not a
yeah,
detrimental dip, but a bit of a dip where they just need to, reevaluate a couple of things. And then when they come into the next season after that, that's when they can really sort of start to work on things and to start working on that ambition to make it the top 4 and to win a hardball and possibly promotion.
yeah, absolutely. I think for this season, a lateral step is not necessarily a backward step for the Giants. So if they can go ahead and successfully defend that shield or even make it to the shield final, I think you could call that nearly a successful season for the Giants at this stage. They're in a tough situation up where they are. They don't have the luxury of having a metropolitan city to grab players from. It really is the back airs of nowhere where they're based and where they train. So it's tough to get that player recruitment, and you don't see the same kind of moving around of players that you would in the Belfast teams and in the Dublin teams. So it really, really puts an emphasis on the coaching to make things improve. And I think they're doing the right job up there. It's just a case of cementing that mindset at the moment, getting through this season and see where they can push to next season.
Absolutely. Exactly the mindset I had on that too. And look, it's hard to if you're, like I said, you're a Giants fan, player, coach, whatever way you're associated with the team. It's hard to hear those words right now on the back of a season now that they're having where they've had 4 losses, but in none of those 4 losses have they been in any way outplayed to an extent where we've seen some big heavy defeats so far this year for certain teams. And look, listen, hold the hands up, Rhinos included, have suffered some heavy defeats too. They've been in every single game, and they will say, well, if we had done this in this game, or if this had gone our way in that game, we could be sitting at 4-1 instead of 0-4-1.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. Is that results have not gone their way this year. I don't think the quality of football has diminished in any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, they have missed out on a few of their key names from previous years, but they do seem to still have a good level of football. So, yeah, like you said, results haven't gone their way. That can be a bit demoralizing for a team, but they need to make sure that they don't get in the mindset of misery, as it were. They need to kind of forget about results that have happened in the past and look towards what's going to happen in the future, because there's still an opportunity within this season to go ahead and prove a few things, and then obviously look towards next season to really make a push for those playoffs, because that's the trajectory that they're on.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're doing, like you said, they're doing the right things. They have flags set up. They're getting youth set up. recruitment is probably going to be high on their agenda in the off season too. So they have got, and with the coaches, with Conan and that too, they have the right people on board that will definitely bring the team forward. Moving on then to Sunday's games. We'll start back in the Premier Division and the huge battle at the bottom between the South Dublin Panthers and the Craigavon Cowboys. Of course, the Panthers coming out on top by 23 points to 8. First of all, scoring wise by the Panthers, and this was their message, which I thought was great. I asked just who was the scorers. He says, absolutely. First up, we have Connor Hoskins. Next, we have Connor Hoskins. And finally, we have Connor Hoskins. Darrett Turley kicked an extra point. Shane Brady caught a 2-point attempt thrown by Jason Banancini. It was 2 receiving touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown as well for Connor Hoskins. On the Craigavon side of things, their lone score came through quarterback Owen Hughes throwing to Austin Ramsey for the TD. Owen also ran in the 2-point himself, and Gavin McConnell had an interception on the day too. The Panthers needed this win desperately, and they got it, which was vital for them in their hopes of surviving this year. Takes them to 3 points, pretty much ensures safety for this year, barring anything else going on, any other craziness, because the Vikings still have 1 game in hand on both the Cowboys and the Panthers. The Cowboys and the Vikings actually still have to play each other as well. So there are some possibilities of some upsets. So the Panthers are definitely not safe 100%. But having 2 teams below them there that still have to face each other is definitely going to give them a modicum of comfort, knowing that they have that bit of cushion. And it just shows, and I mentioned it, and why I backed the Panthers to win last week. You have someone like Connor Hoskins there who is a serious threat in that running back position, and also the linebacker position, and also on special teams. That man plays absolutely everywhere. He absolutely is the heartbeat of that team right now. But also on their O-line as well. They have some big guys on the O-line that can move defenders, that can open the avenues for Connor to make those runs too. So an absolutely huge win for the Panthers in their bid to stay up this year.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. What a luxury it is to have a guy like Connor Hoskins on the team. I think maybe that's what they are missing this year, that they had kind of 3 guys on that team last year who are capable of changing a game in an instant that they don't have this year. But yeah, look, great win for the Panthers. We talked about it last week. We said that maybe the Panthers had a more potent scoring offense coming into this one. So we backed them to win it, and that's what they did. They proved to us that they can score points and they can battle against teams in that kind of area. So yeah, it's again, very good win for the Panthers. They will be feeling pretty comfortable at the moment, sitting there with a win and a draw in the season in terms of their ability to just stay in the Shamrock Bowl conference. So yeah, it really does shift the focus now to Craigavon and to Limerick in a couple of weeks' time. That's going to be a huge battle, and really will decide the fate of that Premier Division kind of bottom end.
Yeah, on the Cowboys side of things, a tough loss to take for a difficult season. They have not had the type of retaining players that they would have liked this year, considering they've look, it's well established, and there's no point beating a dead horse with the players that they've lost this past off season compared to last year. They still, I'm sure, I believe the last score came quite late in the game, so they were quite a few points down before they did score. So again, the offense is continuing to cause an issue. We must send our regards and well wishes also to a couple of the Cowboys lads, I believe 2 had Achilles injuries, possibly ruptured. So absolutely awful. One of them I know for sure, I think, was Joe Buchanan. So sending best wishes to him. I'm not familiar with the second player who unfortunately was injured, especially for Joe coming back off an ACL this year. Just absolutely rotten looks. We wish him the best of health in his recovery too. Like that, it's not, although it feels doom and gloomish at the moment, it's not for the Cowboys. Like we mentioned, they still have to go to Limerick and play the Vikings. They've beaten them already this year. They will fully believe they can do that again. But what do you think has to change in the meantime for Craigavon to make sure that they do beat the Vikings and stay up this year?
It's got to be a mindset change, and I don't think this is any fault of theirs, but they're going to be demoralized with the run of form that they've been on. Like, I think I was having a look, they've scored 3 times this season over 2 games, and that was in their first and their last game. That's a tough run. Those players are going to be feeling down on themselves, but they got to absolutely forget about all of that, because this next game versus UL is going to be their Super Bowl to a certain extent. They're going to have to go down there and make sure they execute, because the Vikings will be smelling blood in the water on this one. They've seen the run of form that the Cowboys have been on. They feel like they can match up quite well with them. They'll feel like they were also unlucky in that first game, that they just couldn't get the offense rolling, but they've scored points since. So, yeah, look, it's going to be a fascinating encounter. I think that's still the main thing for the Cowboys, is to forget about what's happened this season and come into it with a fresh set of eyes, maybe try a few new things, and, yeah, get the W.
Mm-hmm. Before they do face each other, the Vikings will play obviously this weekend against the Admirals, which we will look ahead to as well for sure. Division 1, we're not going to start with the Rhinos. I would have liked to start with the Rhinos, but we're not. The bigger story, I think, from Sunday in Division 1 was the County Antrim Stags getting their first ever victory as a football club, beating the Northwest Vipers by 12 points to 9 in New Forge. A fantastic victory for them. It was a Jay Burton and Owen Delergy receiving touchdowns, both thrown by Scott McLean, that got the victory for them. On the Viper side of things, Josh Reed had a rushing touchdown and Sean Devlin kicked a field goal for the Vipers. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to sort of get them the win in this game, which would have went a long way for them trying to secure a top 4 spot. That they would have gone into this game thinking they had a really, really good chance to win it. And if they did, they could possibly be sitting in 4th right now. They're down in 5th. The Stags now, with their win, are 1-3-1 this year. They're up to 6th with 3 points. And, they could be thinking, 3 games left. Sorry. Yeah, 3 games left. 6, 7, and 8. Including this weekend against the Minotaurs, that if they can get a few results together, maybe they could pip into that 4th spot.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an outside shot, but it's certainly something that they're going to have to consider. I think from now, it's 100% been a successful season for the Stags. So anything that they can get from here on in is going to be a bonus. It's looking likely that they're going to secure some postseason football in the Shield or the Plate, whichever it is in Division 1. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one to watch, to see how they get on there. But yeah, they've gone from strength to strength so far this season. Tough day, obviously, for the Vipers. I know that they were missing QB Dan Donoski. I didn't see their running back has been just ripping it up this season on the score sheet at all, which is suspicious to me. It tells me that maybe he wasn't fit or playing in that game.
Both of them weren't there.
Yeah. So that's a really, really, really tough loss to be taken on any game day at all, to be missing your QB1 and RB1. Credit to them. They still got points on the board. They were still able to run that offense. So, yeah, I'm sure there are positives to be taken from the game versus the Stags, but it's going to feel pretty sore at this stage.
Absolutely, it will. Yeah. But for the Vipers, if you talk to anybody within the organization, their goal for this year was just to complete the 8 games. They're well on track to do that, and anything else was a bonus, and they've gotten some bonus. First of all, with that drawing game against the Stags a couple of weeks ago, and that win this past weekend. It's a great feel-good story for the league this year, especially that needs it, especially with the last few years with teams falling by the wayside and rumors of teams this year that are struggling too. Seeing this newly created, yes, okay, it was 2 teams brought together that were both struggling, but still came together. The coaching has gotten a scheme in place for the guys to work, and they're reaping the rewards of making what was a tough decision at the time, but has shown that it was the right decision at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was 100% the right decision. That kind of bringing them together seems to have galvanized both sides. I don't know what the numbers were like moving into the season for both teams, whether or not they would have been able to start the season. I'm sure they wouldn't have been able to finish the season as separate teams. And even if they were, I wouldn't expect them to be getting victories or draws or anything like that. So, yeah, look, this season has 100% been a success for the Stags so far. And I'm really looking forward to see what they can do next year, maybe upset some more people.
Absolutely. Still time to upset teams this year.
Well,
Like
this
I
is it,
mentioned,
yeah.
they have the game against the Minotaurs this week. They also have they finish up against the Mavericks, and then I think what's the last game then after that? Mavericks. Then I'm not too sure. I can't remember actually right now. I'll have to go and have a look here. I'll find it in a few minutes. But still, fantastic season for them. All the power to them now moving forward. Hopefully they can continue that. The last game to review from this past weekend is the West Dublin Rhinos. They went down to Gorey on a lovely sunny day. Gorey's lovely when it's sunny. Beat the Wexford Eagles 27 points to 0. It was 3 passing touchdowns from rookie QB Kevin Kelly, 2 to Richie Grimes, 1 to Andrea Vicentin. Sorry, I should really know my own players' second names. I'm very sorry, Andrea, if you're listening back to this. Owen O'Donoghue also put in got a rushing touchdown, a much deserved one for being the bell cow sort of running back on Sunday, because we were down 2 other running backs due to unavailability and injury. On the defensive side of things, it was 2 interceptions, one from Carl McGlynn, one from Adam Skelly. David Wright had a fumble recovery, and also a shout out to a punt recovery for Freddie Dawson, former Pirate. So great for him.
There's a lot of former Pirates on that list. There's a lot of former Pirates on that
list. They're just contributing. Richie as well, former Pirate, contributing with 2 touchdowns as well. Like I said,
David, although briefly, was a former Pirate as well.
David was, although briefly, was a former Pirate. So we are petitioning to call the team the West Dublin Pyros after this season. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so a good victory for the Rhinos. 2 wins from 2 there, back-to-back weeks, both away games against playoff potential opponents, or rivals, I should say. 2 games left. It looks playoffs secured, which is great as well. Third playoff appearance in 3 years for the Rhinos. Hopefully to go one better than they did last year, where they made it to the Heart Bowl but lost in the final. On the Eagles side of things, despite a valiant effort by their defense, were able to frustrate the Rhinos at times. The offense as well, just a couple of things just didn't click. Quarterback receivers just didn't have that chemistry going on the day, which if they did, it could have made life an awful lot more difficult for for the Rhinos. They were able to move the ball really well at times, especially with running back Terry Carey. But yeah, Rian, a good victory for the lads, and delighted to be playing some postseason football this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be that the defense is really, really shining on that Rhinos team at the moment. They're keeping scores down, which is always important. Offense is
Third
great, but
shutout this
defense.
season.
Yeah, there you go.
Third shutout
Offense
this
is
season.
great, but defense wins games. Defense wins championships. So yeah, the Rhinos will be happy with that result. Especially against a team like the Eagles. The Eagles have been known to be able to move the ball very well, not shy of scoring either most of the time. So yeah, really, really good result for them or for the Rhinos on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, though, the Eagles will probably be kicking themselves a little bit. They would have really, coming into this game, been expecting to be a little bit closer to the Rhinos in terms of talent and certainly in terms of the score line. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one to take, but it seems like with every week I have a theme that I keep going back to with every game. And for me, with the Eagles, it's going to be, once again, they need to forget about this result and move on to the next one, because as we said last week, there's a lot of important games coming up for the Eagles. They're kind of one of the teams who haven't played very much so far this season. So they have a lot of games left to come. So they've got to make the most of that.
Yeah, their next game is against the Vipers on the 31st of May. But yeah, you did mention that about the Eagles. They have only technically played 4 games this year, so they are 1-3. Still not sure about that game that was postponed against the Mavericks, if it will be rearranged. If not, I believe the game goes down as a draw. So that draw could be vital for the Eagles, because if they can get a few wins under their belt, possibility, because they have the head-to-head record over the Crusaders, that they could pip the Crusaders to 4th spot and still make that playoff.
It's certainly very intriguing, and it's certainly maybe going to be a bit of a controversy. It seems like controversy follows that Crusaders team wherever they go, but if they do end up getting a point out of that game, and they do end up beating the Crusaders in the league by a point or two, the Crusaders are not going to be happy, but those are the rules. Those are the bylaws. That's what we all have to agree to. They get the look on this occasion, but there is the flip side, that they don't get to play that game, and that's crucial minutes of football that they don't get to implement the game plan and come up against what is a very tough opposition. So it's a two-sided sword in this instance.
Yeah. For the Rhinos, their next game is on the 8th of June. They're going to be welcoming the Giants to Dublin for that game before they finish up a week later at home to the Minotaurs, which could be very interesting when it comes to placings in terms of who's going to finish where and who will have to go to who in the playoffs. So that's going to be a very, very interesting game when that comes around later next month. But that is all the games wrapped up. Like you mentioned, we'll just go. I won't go through the full tables. I'll just go through the top 4 positions on each division. So in first, we have the Trojans 5-0. Second, this is a Premier Division. Sorry, UCD 4-0. The Knights are in third, currently sitting at 3-2 on 6 points, and then behind them is Cork Admirals on 2 and 3, on 4 points ahead of the Rebels, of course, with their head-to-head record. In Division 1, the Loud Mavericks are 4-4 with 8 points, sitting pretty at the top. The Westmead Minotaurs are 4-1 with 8 points, but of course behind the Mavericks due to head-to-head. The West Dublin Rhinos are in third spot, 4-2, also 8 points, but both behind both teams, obviously, because they have their 2 losses this year are against both the Minotaurs and the Mavericks, so they are behind them in that sense. And then fourth at the moment, after their win at the weekend, is the Kildare Crusaders on 3-3 on 6 points. Before we move on to our preview of this week's games, I should mention as well that this show and every show this season is by Rain Rocks Web Design. They are the guys behind UCP ie. Head over to the website now. That's where you're going to get the latest fixtures and results, and of course those all important league tables. Make sure that you are heading over there to get the latest updated ones there too. While you're at it, head to our socials at UndercenterPod. That's where you're going to get the latest results and stuff and stats, and of course our plays of the week. We've been doing them every week since the season has started. We'll find out which play made play of the week as well. There's a few contenders. We put it in our own personal group chat. There's a few good contenders now for play of the week this week, so whoever will get it will definitely be deserving of it. Moving then on to our games this week. We'll start in the Premier Division, and we'll start on Saturday. That is, of course, the 24th of May, and it is the big one this week. It is UCD versus the Trojans in UCD. I'm absolutely raging. I cannot make it because I would have gone down to that to see that. It's both teams undefeated. Like I just mentioned, 5-0 Trojans, 4-0 UCD. Trojans have been playing the last few weeks. I think they've had 3 games in the last 4 weeks or something like that. UCD have had the last few weeks off due to obviously the exam season. So chance for bodies to get rested and recover from injuries. Rian, if you had the choice, what would your ideal scenario be going into this game? Would you rather have UCD's side of things where you've been off the last few weeks and you haven't played, or would you rather be the Trojans that have been playing most weeks and that are, I'm not going to say battle hardened, because both teams would be quite battle hardened and know exactly what they're doing at this point, but they have those games done and dusted, and they know they're in that sort of groove.
Yeah, 100%. It's a tricky question. But for me, I think specifically with this game, every single drive is going to matter. And I think the game readiness comes into effect in this case. No matter how much you've been practicing, it still doesn't match up to live reps in a live football game. So I'm going to say that I would prefer to be on the Trojan side in this one, having played through the last 4 weeks, because they're just going to be that much hotter coming onto the field. There's not going to be as much nervousness. It's going to be basically straight back to what they've been doing for weeks now on end. So I think I'd probably shade it and go with the Trojans on that.
Okay. What about then if you look at this scenario where, both teams are undefeated, both teams have been playing extremely well? Do you hide some stuff? Do you hide some stuff in your playbook? Do you hide some stuff in your armor? You know what I mean? Do you hold back a little bit until you possibly see each other again in a Shamrock Bowl?
I think you probably do, to be honest. I don't think either team is looking at this as a must-win game. Therefore, they're going to keep their must-win playbooks in the back pocket. Now, maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm not in the head of either of those head coaches in terms of what they want to do. It'll certainly give us a very, very good indication of where these two teams are at fundamentally, because at the end of the day, that's where they're going to base their game, regardless of whether they want to pull out the stops or not. It's going to be the run game. It's going to be, in the trenches. It's going to be very important. So fundamentally, where these two teams are at, this is going to be a massive, massive game to kind of judge where that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a tough one, especially with how the league is set up. There is no real difference between first and second. Both teams get home playoffs. Both teams avoid each other until a potential Shamrock Bowl. So, I guess holding some stuff back and might be the right option. Do you think if both teams are holding, do you think that both teams are going to learn a lot from each other ahead of this? Now, they did scrimmage with each other before the season started, so there would have been some idea, but again, scrimmages, you kind of hold your playbook back a bit as well. It's kind of just getting, some reps in the legs. So, yeah, I don't want to dampen the hype for this game because it's a huge game, but thinking of it with like my future coaching hat on, you're kind of like, well, I'm not going to show them everything this week.
No, exactly. But I think like that goes back to what I was saying. The fundamentals still have to be good, and we are certainly going to get a good display of clean, crisp football from both of these teams. It's the two best teams in Ireland. They're not going to suddenly run the ball on every down, and we'll have a punt fest. This is going to be a good game. Regardless of whether or not they're pulling out the stops, trick plays, downfield bombs. If you're looking to see what a game of American football in Ireland should look like, head down to that game on Saturday.
Yeah. How big would you give the psychological edge for the winning team in this before they possibly face each other again?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty big, to be honest. It gives you a little bit of bravado, a little bit of bragging rights over the opposition team. It also puts your mind a little bit at ease that you're capable of beating the team that you're coming up against. So you're capable of doing it again. But on the flip side of that, you got to be, if you come out the losing side of this game, you got to think to yourself, well, it's difficult to beat any team once, let alone twice. This is the AFI. Nothing is 100% certain. So yeah, no matter what happens, you've got to be of the mindset of I can beat the team in the next game that they play, because we will certainly see them play again this season.
Yeah. Well, then tell me who's winning this game.
It's a very, very tough one for me. I think probably the most fundamentally sound team is UCD, but I just have a sneaking suspicion about that Trojans team. They seem very, very stingy on defense, and they seem to now be able to score on offense. I think I'm going to take the Trojans in this one, but by a very, very tight scoreline, 3 points at the maximum.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go for defense. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go for a draw. I would love a 30-30 draw or something like that, Although we thought last season that this fixture was going to promise us points, and I believe it was 13-8 in the end. So, we're not exactly guaranteed them. So just heads up for that, but still go to the game either way if you can. Moving on then to the other games. First of all, we'll talk about the South Dublin Panthers, fresh off their first win of the year. Welcome the Belfast Knights, who are looking to secure their playoff spot by heading down to Dublin and beating the Panthers. Ryan, after such a maybe emotional, you could say, victory last week for the Panthers, they have to get their heads right back in the game straight away against a really dangerous Knights team who have played really well, who have, if you want to sort of compare things, just recently went and put 48 points on the Vikings side, who drew 0-0 with the Panthers. So this is a very dangerous side for a Panthers team that, like I said, great that they got that first win, but it is not all home and hose. They still have games to play, and if they take their eye off the ball here, they could be on the wrong end of a big score.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a concern. Not the best game to be coming back to a week after what was, I assume, a tough victory in the previous one. I think attrition is probably going to play a factor here. By all accounts, the squad size of the South Dublin Panthers is not really where it should be for a Premier Division side. And coming up against the brawn that the Knights have, particularly in the trenches, that's going to be a tough day for them. I wonder how well the bodies are going to hold up against that for 4 quarters. And like you said yourself, that Knights team are very, very capable of scoring. Liam Moores is back and seems to have no issues at all now. Zach McDowell, obviously, on the outside, who filled in very admirably for Moores, has got a very, very good connection with him there as well. So, yeah, like you said, it certainly would be a worry if I'm a Panther that this one could get out of hand quickly.
Right. Give us a score prediction then. Or who's going to win, not even a score prediction.
I'm going to say the Knights, and I unfortunately think it will be a bit of a cricket score.
Yeah. I'm going to say with the Knights too. Panthers are going to have to sort of get their head back in the game here. I know they got the win that they have to get, but you still need it for the confidence and for the future of the team, that they still need to make sure that they are still competitive in games if they're not yet winning them. So, but I'm going to go for a Knights win on this one. The other game in the Premier Division is the UL Vikings welcoming, after their exam break, are back in action. They're welcoming the Cork Admirals in a Munster derby. It's a tough one for this one. I can't see anything other than Admirals win on this one. I know I talked about offensive concerns, but defensively they're stout. They are not conceding much at all. And for a Vikings side that have struggled to move the ball, that haven't scored yet this year, I can't see it being anything but a tough afternoon for the Vikings.
Yeah, this one's going to be a tough one, I think. I think at this stage they're going to have to go siege mentality. You got to learn something from every game left on the calendar. On this one, you got to learn how to kind of keep those scores down, because like we said, the Admirals haven't really excelled on offense this season. Even in their excellent victory at the weekend over the Rebels, they still didn't put up a big score line. So, they're going to have to keep the score down in this one. If they can do that, that'll be a positive to take away from it, moving into the week after versus the Cowboys. But yeah, really tough stretch for the Vikings, a season-defining stretch for the Vikings. But this one's going to be a struggle.
Yeah. So we're both going for Admirals wins on that, yeah?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Moving on to Division 1, and we'll start with the game on Saturday. That is the Loud Mavericks, with their perfect start to the year, taking on the Giants, coming off that disappointing loss at the weekend to the Crusaders. Again, like that, after watching the Mavericks do what they did in the last game against the Minotaurs, who were their closest rivals, I can't see them just again like that, with comparing it sort of similar to Vikings and the Admirals. I can't see the Mavericks having too much trouble with this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the way that offense is playing at the moment, it's going to be tough for anybody to stop them, let alone the Giants, who are coming off a string of tough results. Close results. Unfortunately, I don't think this one is going to be close. If you believe the stats coming out of the Mavericks at the moment, and I think we might need to get an independent adjudicator in to fact check those. But Ty has thrown more touchdowns than he has more touchdowns than he has incompletions this season, which is just an insane stat to have. Obviously, he's brought a wealth of knowledge down from the Rebels to the Mavericks, and he's implementing that game plan very well, to the extent that they are scoring with ease against everybody they come across. So, as with the Vikings, this one is going to be important for the Giants to just take some positives out of it. Try and get scores on the board, because that defense has been stingy also versus a lot of their oppositions. And yeah, just try and get the ball moving on offense. Try and stop that potent passing attack on defensive side of the ball. But unfortunately, this one feels a little bit like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, same. I'm going to go with a victory for the Mavericks on that one too. The last game of the weekend to have a look at, it's the Westmeath Minotaurs coming off that loss to the Mavericks. They're back at home in Mullingar. They welcome the Stags coming off their first win as a team, like we mentioned at the start of the show. So an interesting game here. The Stags hoping they can go 2 from 2. The Minotaurs making sure that they get everything back on track so they can secure their spot for the playoffs at the end of the season. Despite the Stags getting that victory against a dogged sort of Vipers team, I still think that the Minotaurs, especially at home, are going to have a little too much. I believe, despite him being ejected, because it was in the first half, Rafa Montero will be available to play if he is actually there available to play. So, and he is a huge threat, especially for that Stags defense. So, I think I'm going to go with a Minotaurs victory on this one, and I think that, although the Stags won last year, I think this next step would be maybe too big of a step this early in their life as a team.
Right, exactly. I think, with the Minotaurs experience in the SBC, it's going to be a tough one for the Stags. I think as well, it needs to be noted that the Minotaurs will be licking their wounds a little bit after coming off that heavy defeat to the Mavericks. So they'll want to put on a display in this one. And unfortunately, I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that's all the teams. That's all the games. We've wrapped up. That's 10 games in total reviewed or previewed. So that is your fix for this week. Of course, we hope you enjoy the games this week. I don't think we will have a show next week. Unfortunately, unavailable myself. I'll have to see if Reen, you are available, or if Alex is back in from his holidays in time. He should be, because I believe he's playing this week, so he will be back in time. So we'll see. But before we go, like I said, head to ucp.ie. That is for the latest league tables and all the shows. Head to the socials at UnderCenterPod on Instagram. That's where you're going to get all the latest details on the AFI season. Also, head over to our TikTok. Follow us there, Under Center Podcast. That's where you get all plays of the week as well. Ryan, as always, sir, thank you very much.
Been a pleasure.
And until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.